Yeah, no worries, take your time.
It's like the school board.
A little tall for the Zoom camera. Can people hear us on Zoom?
Yes.
All right, everybody on Zoom, just to let you know, we're going to get started here in a couple minutes. We're just getting everything set up. This is on mute here. And where can I look at the participants? Actually, great. Yeah, this is great.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, I'll share the screen. All right, everybody, why don't we get started here? If everyone's hearing us okay on the Zoom, you're welcome to put your little thumb up if you want. If not, I want to welcome everyone here in person as well. I'm Brian Bedoli. I'm the Executive Director for the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency. I have a list of logistic and housekeeping items that I have to make sure I don't forget. So if you are in need of any facilities, there's stuff right outside here. The restrooms are right out front in front of the door. We have a sign-in sheet. If you haven't signed in, we'd love to have your contact information so we could keep you, up to date on the overall project and everything that goes on subsequent to tonight's event. I will say that tonight's event is being recorded via Zoom and here in the audience, so we could try to, maximize the number of people hearing the initial project presentation. I have a soundtrack today. All right, there we go. So in terms of the sort of logistics, in terms of what we're doing, the format, it is a hybrid meeting. So we're just going to need to make sure that all presenters and in-person attendees speak into the microphone. So when you do have a question, just so people on Zoom can hear you, we'll come give you a mic. So after the floor has been open for comments, we're going to rotate from in-person to online. People in person, again, come up to the microphone and we'll go over the agenda. Our plan is to talk for about 20 minutes. And then the whole point of tonight is to really listen. And that's why we called it a listening session. So getting into, sort of introducing the overall group and what we're doing here tonight. As you all saw in the, in the notice, we're talking about the Webster lot, the potential redevelopment of that site, 5.5 acre site right in the center of South Norwalk. We're joined today by our development team from Quarterra, and I'll kind of talk about how we got to that point and how we're here tonight. And really what it is just an introduction. This is the start of a long community-driven process. We want to make sure that we're listening along the way. We have a very, interesting opportunity that we want to try to, take a look at as a community and try to drive the maximum benefit from this, potential investment here. So in terms of where we are and how we got here today, so some of you I don't think I've met in person. I've been with the agency for about 3 years, but I inherited about 2 decades worth of planning for the Webster lot. It goes back even to 2004, if not further. People taking a look at this site, recognizing maybe a surface parking lot may not be the highest and best use in the middle of the downtown. What can be done with it? What makes sense? What are the constraints? What are the opportunities? And also, what's the community interested in? Are we good? All right, good. So tonight we're gonna be having that conversation. And I think, what we have the benefit of, and I think some of you here have been involved with our project around the South Norwalk train station. We did a 1.5 year long planning exercise, community outreach, really just trying to listen. And all of that feedback that we received around the South Norwalk train station stays with me today, stays with us today. And we integrated that in the developer selection, which is who will be presenting tonight, which is actually presented to the Economic and Community Development Committee back in December. And we're carrying that forward. We're well aware of a lot of the concerns, and I hope we're able to talk about them tonight. What are the impacts to infrastructure? What are the impacts to schools? What are the impacts to, gentrification? These are all real things that people are dealing with. And we're not here to kind of put our head in the sand. We want to talk about it. We want to figure out what we could do with this opportunity to maybe help address these things, looking at reinvestment in the community, doing things like our South Norwalk Improvement Program with the developer resources we're able to generate. And I really want to just help guide along the process. There's a lot of procedural elements that I think, some people may be cold to, may not be familiar with on the public side. And that's what our Office of Redevelopment Agency is really trying to do, is help be a conduit for this discussion. So that's the purpose of tonight. Basically to come to you with this concept, show you where we're at and hear and learn from you all. That's my #1 goal. So I won't belabor the point too much. We have a great development team here. to present sort of their initial concept for the Webster lot. In terms of procedural items, I do want to just catch you up on if you guys haven't been following it as part of, since the Economic and Community Development meeting that we did in December. What we did is over a year-long process to identify even a qualified developer to have this conversation. We actually put out a request for qualifications, a nationwide search to try to identify people that were interested in this site. So there's been a lot of planning, but doing is a little bit different than planning, making sure that the market's interested, making sure that there's, actual resources available to do this work, and then to work with the community in an effective way to actually, deliver a project. So once we did a request for qualifications, we actually then issued a request for proposals. We were fortunate to get 7 firms originally, and then we were able to then issue it to a select group of 3 that qualified. So Cortera is the firm that sort of rose to the top. I'm very excited to introduce them to you today and talk about the initial concept. But again, it's advertised as a listening session, and that's what I hope to do the most of. So I just want to thank you all for coming, and I will give it over to Cortera.
Thanks, Brian. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate you guys showing up this evening to participate. We appreciate your time. I'm Greg Ballou. I am the division president for Cortera for the New York metro area. So out of our office, we cover Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Our closest office here is in Stamford. We actually did office here in South Norwalk for about a year prior to our moving to Stamford. Here with me on my team today, down there at the end on my team is Doug Brown and Will Cannon. And our architects, Antunovich Associates, I have Brian Gaffney and Joe Antunovich himself right here. So there, as we get into a little bit more of some of the early thinking on the project, Brian and Joe will jump up here and walk you all through some of that. Just a couple of opening remarks. First of all, I think it's important for just to reemphasize what Brian already said, which is we are here to listen to you all, to understand what your concerns are, understand what your ideas are, so on, and really work as best as we can to incorporate that into the ultimate product. What you're going to see here tonight is in no way set in stone. It's very, very fluid right now. This is all changing and moving around, and this is the perfect opportunity to gather feedback, public feedback, so that everybody is being heard, and we're taking into consideration all the best ideas and all the constraints that we have to work around here. The other thing that I'll say is that we recognize the importance of this site. This is a very very important site in the middle of Norwalk. It's a focal point, and we recognize that this is something that's going to be here for years, and that it is going to potentially be, a very, very much of a placemaking, groundbreaking type of a development. And it matters very much to us to get it right. So this is a process that will be going on for some time. This is not a one and done thing. We're going to continue to do these sessions. As we get deeper into the process, we will continue to refine our thinking on the site plan. We'll continue to make modifications. And as we get a little bit deeper into it, we'll have other types of open house nights as well, where we will probably have a broader array of our professionals that will participate and be able to answer questions at an even more granular level, just depending on what the open issues and concerns are as we go forward. Just to talk a little bit about who we are. Let's see if I can advance the slides here. There we go. Okay, so this is talking a little bit about just kind of where our head is here on this project, and really what we have wanted to do. And I'm going to cover this one briefly because I know I said I was going to talk about who we are, but really the idea here is to create a village, a village feeling in the middle of South Norwalk here, which would be a mixed-use development, retail on the ground floor, residential above, and create an open, porous site, meaning, able to have light and air and people passing freely through the site. And I think that's really what we've been trying to do here. So we'll get into more details of that in a minute. But as I said, a little bit about who we are. So Cortera is a wholly owned subsidiary of Lennar Corporation, formerly known as Lennar Multifamily Communities. We went through a rebranding here recently, but same company. Lennar Corporation, our parent company, is the largest single-family home builder in the United States. They have offices all over the country. Lennar Multifamily Communities was started about 12 years ago. And we have about 20 offices all over the country, very active in all of the major markets. We have currently projects going on here in the New York metro area. We have one building just up the road here in Stamford, the Smith, which we're completing right now. That's 414 units. We have another building that we just recently completed in White Plains. So continue to be active, well-capitalized company, and very, very accomplished in what we've done. I think we've done over 120 projects in the last 12 years. So enough of that. Moving on here, just there's some imagery here just of some of the projects that we've done. On the top is the Lively, which is in Jersey City. The Smith is the project that I mentioned in Stamford. That one is a 17-story building, much larger in scale than what we are talking about here. We're talking about something much more low rise, much more kind of in keeping with the surrounding architecture here. And also have pictures at the bottom of the page here of the Mitchell, which is 434 units in White Plains, also much larger in scale than we're talking about right now. And that brings us to our architecture firm, Antunovich Associates. Just to talk 2 seconds about Antunovich, just from my perspective. The reason that we chose to work with Antunovich on this project is that they really are masters of both mixed use and place making. I think that they're the top in the country, and that's why we wanted to bring them in. They've done groundbreaking projects in a number of different markets, and they are always, in my view, an agent for positive change wherever they go. So have a lot of respect for what they do, and I'm sure you can find out more about them online, but I'll let them talk a little bit more about what they do, if you guys would like to.
Thanks, Greg. Antunovich has been around since about 1990. Mr. Joe Antunovich, which is standing right here, founded the company. We have 5 offices throughout the country: Washington, D.C., Buffalo, Chicago, L.A., Austin, and we practice in almost every single state in the continental United States. I think what we do is we try not to leave fingerprints. We actually come in and we listen to the community, exactly what we're doing here today. And as you can see up on the screen, there's a multitude of different styles, scales, intensities, richnesses, diversities that, for example, the one property that we have in the upper left, that's in Arlington, Virginia, which is right along a main drag. And how did we slow down the speed on the sidewalk? And, you had this very main road that you're running along. And how do you slow down and create a pedestrian experience? So we actually made this very simple drive loop with the park in the middle that actually extended the retail. And it became a kind of central point to actually Arlington, Virginia. And similar in Lincoln Common, along some of the diagonal streets coming out of Chicago, how do you make these pedestrian-centric, neighborhood-centric places that give back to the community and give some generosity to the public space? How do we give that back? And also include the developer's requirements to have the appropriate amount of square footage. And then in the bottom left, we have our project in Charleston. Charleston's a very interesting place to work. They are very particular in the way things look. So we actually worked very closely with the neighborhoods, the planning commissions, the historic preservation review boards, the redevelopment agencies, to actually build a building right there on the water at the end of their main street that just fits beautifully into the context of Charleston. And then obviously the The last image that we have on there is the Viridian, which is a mixed-use development similar to what we're planning to do here, where we have a beautiful ground level retail experience, very pedestrian centric, parks and open spaces, places for pop-up retail and community events and, movie nights and anything you can possibly think of, that is then surrounded by residential and office space to actually create an extension of the existing community. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Brian. This is just talking about who our civil engineer for the project is, which is Redness and Mead. They are based just up the road in Stamford, Connecticut. A few of the projects that they've done here locally, not going to spend too much time on this, but they are very familiar with doing business here in Norwalk. And our land use law firm, Carmody, also happens to be out of Stamford. They as well are very experienced in Norwalk. All right, so I'm just going to start off talking a little bit about the site, some of the constraints, how we approached this, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Brian and Joe. So look, this is a special site. This is very much of a focal point for the city, very central. We have a site that's surrounded by several roads here and actually bisected by a number of easements and other internal circulation roads that we needed to think about as we were thinking about what we want to do. Up on the screen here is a diagram that shows a number of easements that currently exist on the site. And this is both sewer and telecom easements. Now, these are easements that we are going to be looking at as we go forward to see what options we have to potentially relocate some of these to give us more flexibility. But for the time being, the original site planning effort that we started with that was part of the RFP response really was kind of working around these as kind of a worst case scenario of, hey, if we can't move these, this is where this leaves us. This also shows several privately owned parcels, which are shaded in kind of a pink color here. The importance of this is severalfold. First of all, we are engaging in conversations with owners of all of these neighboring parcels. We have not assumed that we would be acquiring these. We would be, as the site plan shows, doing buildings that would kind of work around these, but we will continue to have conversations with different property owners to see if there's an opportunity to expand the size of the site and potentially make the development better. So we will continue to evaluate those. The Seatown store, which you see kind of at the bottom of the screen along Washington Street, that particular property is currently under contract to another developer. We have been speaking with that developer as well to look at options of sort of coordinating with them to have a overall coordinated site plan. I can't speak to exactly where they are with their transaction or what that timing might be, but we're looking at ways to work with them and potentially even move lot lines to make both developments more successful. So I can't speak again to exactly what they're looking at and exactly what that means for the Seatown. We're certainly hopeful that going forward that there can continue to be a grocery store somewhere on the site. We also, it's worth noting that we do, respect all of our neighbors. I see Mike Oz here in the audience tonight, who is an important neighbor that owns 50 Washington. All the neighbors are important and we recognize that. And we want to make sure that as we are continuing to modify this site plan, that we take into account all the concerns of all the neighbors to the maximum extent possible. So we continue to, we look forward to continuing to work with all the neighbors. So this slide right here is really the preliminary site plan that was put forward as part of our RFP response. As you'll see, You can still see the yellow easements shaded in here, and you'll see how we have been working around those to date. As we talked about early on, the premise here, again, was creating what we would call a porous site, meaning that we want to invite, the public into the site. We are not trying to create a walled off fortress here. We want something that draws people in, and more importantly, includes a park green area in the middle. As you see kind of there to the bottom left of the site plan, you'll see the word park. And what that is intended to be is a large open space that would create opportunities for public gatherings, music events, pop-up retail, a lot of the things that Brian mentioned earlier. So that has been kind of a pivotal element from the get-go that we would like to try to preserve. We think that there is a lot of community value to that. But again, as you can see, a number of openings to the site. The idea is to have retail on the ground floor of a number of these buildings and to create a very pedestrian-friendly environment. There is a central road that goes kind of from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. It says New Road is labeled creatively. And that is intended to remain really in effect in place where an existing road goes through the middle of the parking lot right now. And that is to help relieve traffic pressures from the surrounding roads, from Washington Street and Martin Luther King in particular. The Webster Alley label, which you may not be able to see particularly well because it's shaded in yellow, but the intention there is to certainly keep that particular pedestrian thoroughfare open and have that as one of the main entrances into the site. And again, that's part of creating this village feel, the sense that you're in almost like a European old town area where you have, somewhat pedestrian scale, attractive streets with retail, a lot of energy, potentially public art, things of that nature that are very inviting and I think create a lot of value for the surrounding community. So those were a lot of our objectives. But again, I'm going to stress yet again, this is early stages. This is not set in stone by any means. This was our first attempt at it. We think that we have accomplished some good things with what we've done here, but we want to hear from you and we want to work your feedback into what the ultimate final product is. So with that, I am going to turn that back over to Brian and or Joe and let them dig a little bit more deeply into just the thinking of the site and the look and feel.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. And, I think just to kind of jump back in, there are a few elements that we want to emphasize here. One is we realize that you have 618 parking spots out there. We know that we have to replace that and actually even expand upon that. So part of this, I don't know if I'm allowed to walk with this. Can I walk around? All right. All right. So right actually here, hopefully what we're looking to do is actually provide a 650 parking space parking garage that would actually replace all of the parking that is currently done on the site. What that does is it frees us up to basically contribute back to the community. And the few things that we want to emphasize with this plan, just like what Greg said, is it's very malleable. This is very early stages. But the few things that we wanted to do, Greg talked about the new road that's coming through. The idea is hopefully this will relieve some of the traffic and allow us to control some of the traffic that spills out onto the streets, not actually introducing large outlets of vehicular traffic directly onto city streets. We can actually control it a little bit better by creating that new road. The second piece is actually creating this pedestrian promenade. It would not be vehicular whatsoever. This would be lined with, retail stores. The movie theater borders it right now. And we could have beautiful lighting, landscaping, street side cafes, pop-up retail, all of those wonderful things that we've been talking about. And then it kind of lands in a park at the end, which is actually going to be built over another parking garage, which will actually service as the parking garage for the residents of the development. And so, and that beautiful kind of rollingness where little tiny pieces of the parking garage may poke up. It's kind of very similar to the landscape of the shoreline of Norwalk and Connecticut as a whole. And so hopefully we kind of recreate and have this beautiful little park that has outlets all around, but is this beautiful secluded place where you can eat your sandwich on a Tuesday afternoon during lunch, all the way up to having movie night and farmers markets and anything potentially the community wants. And so I think those were kind of the main driving forces that we put into this plan. And we tried to kind of then build around those ideas, relieving traffic, providing extensions of Main Street and the retail and Washington Street corridor, and then creating a really nice public space, a grand public space for Norwalk. And then what we've done is basically flanked Martin Luther King with 5-story buildings, and then the buildings that are internal to the site are actually 4-story buildings. So we're trying to keep it low, keep it within the vernacular, keep it within the style, the scale, the overall just appearance of South Norwalk, because we actually really appreciate it. It's quite a beautiful piece that you have as a community already. And what we want to do is try to stitch our new elements into your existing community. We're not trying to make a new community. We're not trying to do any of that. We're really just trying to expand upon what you have. So kind of going through what we wanted to show you is these are kind of some initial conceptual ideas about just talking about scale, talking about style, talking about breaking up the massive buildings, things of that nature. And these are some images, kind of what Greg was referencing, that kind of European feel where it's a pedestrian promenade, no cars, lined with retail, trees, all of that wonderful stuff. The park could potentially have hard surface spaces for farmers markets, as well as green spaces to have, you know, Cub Scout meetings or anything that you'd want to have. And then these ideas are also about us building on top of structure. Just because there is some density, just because we have a parking garage doesn't mean we can't bury it under a beautiful green roof that we could landscape, plant trees on, do all kinds of things that make it look like it's actually just a park on the surface, but underneath actually house all the things that we still need, which is parking. And these are just, again, these are just ideas. This is kind of where we started our goals. Same thing along here. You know, we wanted to create pedestrian street frontage, generosity, green space along Martin Luther King, set the buildings back, you know, all do things that kind of our community are proactive to the community, are kind of what you need in the community. And then just try to create a life, you know, create a character, expand upon that wonderful culture that is South Norwalk.
One thing I'd like to point out too on these images, you see that the sidewalks are very wide. Too often now we find the sidewalks are narrow and everyone wants to sit outside in the nice weather, be able to put chairs outside. So this image here, page 15, shows that kind of character where you have this indoor, outdoor feel, and the scale of the buildings are such that they're scaled to what we find downtown right now. They're not overly tall. They are very similar in scale to the buildings on Main Street, very similar to the buildings on Washington. And that coupled with what we're doing at the ground plane, we were talking earlier today, and they said, well, how would you describe your company? We make spaces. We make public spaces that are memorable. To the church right across the street, after a Sunday, come on over and enjoy this. This can be your front yard. This can be the neighborhood front yard from across Martin Luther King. So what we've done here, these are projects that we have implemented ourselves. These are not out of a picture book that we've just, you know, taken off the internet. These are actually projects we've done and implemented, some of which with Quatera, and we're just thrilled that we'll be able to bring images like this to this wonderful site together.
So Doug, the next slide is a timeline. Are you gonna? Sure.
So I know, okay, it's a little more visible up there. So just some notes about timeline and how we're thinking about things. And you know, going back to what Greg mentioned before, this is by no means, you know, the exact timeline of how we're thinking, you know, that this will play out. I think we're certainly flexible, and we want this to kind of to be done with care and with thought. So as these timelines fluctuate, that's absolutely okay. Where we are kind of right now is a little after that sort of developer selected note that you see up there. And we're in the community engagement stage, and we're really in the you know, first inning of this, and we're looking forward to doing this over the next several months, getting together more times and working through the feedback that you guys give us and present new revised options and really work through things. So you know, over the next several months, we'll be doing that together. And then hopefully sometime towards the end of the summer and in the fall, we'll be kicking off design as we get a site plan really finalized. So in terms of overall progress, you know, I think right now we're looking at a construction start date sometime in the middle of next year, in you know, spring of next year. So we're going to work towards that. I think we're going to work together with the city and with the community and hopefully make that a realization. But you know, I think as Greg mentioned before, we have a lot of work to do before we get there. So we're looking forward to doing it together.
And I will, let's see where we are. Okay, so I think that kind of brings us to the end of the slide. So just a few more very general comments before we open it up to questions. I think that just some general things that I think are important to know about this. And these are things that we see in just about every development that we work on, questions that we almost always get. One would be, is this going to be a burden on the city? Well, I think that you will, as time goes on, see economic studies that definitely say otherwise. But here's what I'll say is that right now, this is a city-owned parking lot that is not generating property taxes. After this development is built, it will be paying well in excess of $2.5 million for property taxes every year. And that number will be refined as time goes on. But, you know, suffice it to say that this will be a substantial contribution to city coffers every year. And I think that certainly those funds are, you know, unquestionably badly needed and can be deployed in great ways. So that's important to know. That we always get the question of, well, is this going to overload our schools? Is this going to overly burden our schools? And I think that what's important to know about multifamily developments today, particularly the newer developments that you've seen in Norwalk, is that their impact to the schools has been very minimal. We've pulled numbers from a lot of the recent developments, and it looks, the data that I have seen suggests that for every 100 apartments, you only see about 3 school children. So it's actually a very minimal impact. So I think that that's important to know. We've talked about other impact to infrastructure. It's come up a couple times tonight, whether it's traffic or other things. I think that when a major development goes in like this, those are always important studies that you have to work through with your civil engineering team, with the traffic department, with civil engineering department at the city, and so on, to make sure that we're making whatever accommodations we need to you know, kind of minimize our footprint, minimize the fingerprints, as Brian said, and you know, be a good neighbor. So with that, Brian, should we kind of open it up to general questions here in the room, and then I guess other questions online as well?
That'd be great.
Okay.
So we're gonna go direct from here. All right, good deal. I know that was probably a lot of information all at once. So that's the point. We wanted to kind of present you with some information and then ultimately hear from you. So as I mentioned before, we're recording on Zoom so we could do this as a hybrid meeting. So we just wanted to offer an opportunity for anyone to either come forward with questions or comments, initial reactions, and then we can kind of take it from there. I just want to make sure you have a microphone. Would this be the mic that they should use, or there's a mic right up there. If you guys want to, if anyone wants to come up right now, make any initial comments, you're more than welcome. Stop sharing the screen share.
We good? Can you hear me? Good afternoon or evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm excited about the possible opportunities that this project may present. My name is Miguel Fuentes. I'm joined by several members of the Carpenters Union who are people who I represent. I do a lot of the business development and recruitment and outreach for folks in the community, similar to what we did in Sono Mall. We had about 300 carpenters on that job. And we also did at the Smith Building later on, where we had about 100 carpenters come in and kind of clean it up and get it on the right track. Some of those men are there. This one right here, as a matter of fact, he's on that project right now. So what our hope is for this project, and I know it's early in the stages, but that all of the things that we've talked about so far about taking the community into consideration, not just the aesthetics, how it looks, how it fits, how it feels, but that there's equity for the folks who are surrounding that project potential and have the opportunity to actually work on that. So there's a real economic impact for the men and women that I represent and other people who may be in that community who want to break into the industry through apprenticeship. We have state-of-the-art training. It's a cost savings for our contractors and developers because you're getting people who mitigate risk because they're trained at a discount because they're at about 45% of a journeyman scale. So working together, I can see how we can, with some forethought and commitment, we can do it the right way and make sure that the impact is holistic. And I'm sure anyone who's here would like to be a part of that project. How many people here from the Carpenters Union? Raise your hand. They all love to be a part of that project. This is just the ones we got out of the jobs that are going on right now. Thank you for your time, and you'll be hearing from us.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Hey, Tanner, you gonna come up or? What? That's okay. That's no problem. We'll take yours and then we'll go there. It's a good idea.
So, hi, everybody. Is this all right?
Yeah, you're good.
My name is Tanner Thompson. I'm a Norwalk resident. I actually live right up the hill here on Golden Hill. I very frequently walk through this parking lot on my way to the movie theater, to the bus stop, to Washington Street, to Oyster Shell Park. And I am looking forward to not having to walk through a parking lot. I'm also the chair of the city's advisory commission for biking and walking, the Bike Walk Commission. And so that's mostly the lens that I'm looking at this through is the transportation lens, especially the alternative transportation lens. First of all, obviously, I love the pedestrian promenade, the pedestrian walkway. Part of my experience with walking and biking was living for a couple of years in Germany, and that was one of the big takeaways. In Germany, is like every town, big or small, even like tiny little towns will have a little, I guess in English, in England, they call it a high street, right? A little pedestrian zone in the center with all these shops. And so I'm hoping that this ends up looking a little bit like that, a place where people congregate, people can run a lot of errands at once, chain their trips together. So that part I love. I also love how much housing we're adding through this project to the housing market. I'm sure all of you are aware that we have a housing crisis. We have the lowest vacancy rate in the nation at 2%. And that bears out in the high rents that we have around here. Making some of the units affordable, obviously, is a great strategy, but also just like getting more units on the market is necessary. Now, I want to address the biggest concern people have, as I've talked to a lot of people in Norwalk, about adding housing units to the market, which is that people move in and they bring their cars, right? They move in and they add to the traffic. They add to the traffic in Sono. They add to the traffic between Sono and Route 1, where a lot of our shopping opportunities are, right? They add to traffic between here and 95. And so my chief concern with this project, although I like the project a lot on the whole, I think it'll be a great asset to Norwalk. It seems like a lot of effort has been put into making sure that there is enough parking. I think there's too much parking. I think that if we build a project like this with 1,100 parking spaces, then we're guaranteeing that there will be 1,100 cars that are coming and going, adding to the traffic on MLK, on Washington Street, et cetera. And I'm not sure that's necessary. This project is like the most prime location in all of Norwalk to live car light, and for some people, car free. There's an example that I want to point out of a completely parking free, at least parking for residents free housing development. It's called cul-de-sac, if you've not heard of it, some of you maybe have. 600 units of housing, zero on-site parking for residents. This development is not in New York, it's not in Boston, it's not in San Francisco, it's not in Portland, it's not in Seattle, it's in Tempe, Arizona. And it works because it's on a light rail line. And it's designed around the idea that people have e-bikes or other micromobility and they take the light rail. Well, guess what? We have better than light rail. We have the busiest commuter rail line in the country that's like 2 blocks away from this site, right? And we already have a Main Street, we have a Washington Street, we have a C-Town. I do want to point out that it's imperative that we keep the grocery store there. I hope that there end up being even more grocery opportunities as the retail fills in. But having at least one anchor grocery store, I think, is critical. Otherwise, that neighborhood becomes kind of a food desert, and it's the fastest growing area in the city in terms of new residents. So we absolutely need a grocery store there. So obviously, there's a lot of different uses that are proposed for this. We have housing, we have commercial, we have like retail, we have office space. There are going to be parking needs for that. I'm not saying that we build this with zero parking, but I think especially for the residential use case, and when we build new housing here in Norwalk, we have the opportunity to kind of define, well, in particular, how many cars people bring with them when they move in, right? These are going to be new people. A lot of people are going to be new people to Norwalk, or people relocating within Norwalk. And there's such a demand for housing, or there's such a demand to live in Norwalk, that people will move into this. This will be full, regardless of whether it has parking or not. The question is, do we want the people who move in to bring their cars with them, or do we want them to leave them wherever they're moving from, maybe sell them and keep their cars off the road because they're living in the densest, most transit-rich part of Norwalk? So those are my thoughts.
All right, thank you so much. That is definitely something we're gonna be looking into heavily. So we'll be in communication on that. Yeah. Hey, what's your name? Sorry.
My name is Melody, Sweet Melody Reagan, but everyone calls me Sweets. And that's true. That's a true story. I have a business in the parking lot. So the more that you explain, it's like putting a gut in my stomach and turning it around, because I have yet to hear you mention what happens to the small businesses. I've been there 12 years. And just like Tanner said, it is a prime location. So people, the inner city youth, can walk to us. We're a nonprofit also, Sono Entertainment and Recording Studios, and the LIFT program, Learning is Fun Too. So not only do we service the inner city youth, but we also service the other small businesses or people that come to Norwalk. Again, like Tanner, it's right off the highway, so they can get to us. It's right off of Metro North, so they can get to us. What about us? I haven't heard you say a plan for the small businesses. I have 2, so you're taking 2 businesses away from me and they're highlighted. What about us? What's your plan? And then is it going to be gentrified to where I can't afford it? Am I going to be able to afford and continue our business and continue to service the community at an affordable price? I've been there for over a decade. So I want to know, what about us? Talk to me about me. It's beautiful. It looks great. I love it. The foot traffic, the promenade, all that stuff. It makes me want to jump up, but I have yet to hear you say anything about us. And we weren't notified. I think when things like this happen, notify the small businesses. Don't tell the landlords, tell us. Put something in the mail. Do walk around, hand flyers, say, you know what, there's a small business that may not have heard about it. Let us know. So I think the communication should be inclusive of all, not just the hour. Someone sent it to me, it was news to me, and all the property owners, they're not right here like Mike Oz. So I'm representing them too. Do you have plans for their tenants? What's going to happen? Are we going to be able to afford to have a recording studio entertainment space for the inner city youth and small clients that we have, and the big clients that we have that come in from the city? Are we going to have a space for them, and can I afford that rent? Speak to us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sweet.
Thanks.
As a musician myself, I want to make sure we have the
Okay,
opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But I think I just want to take it just to reiterate some of the points that were made too, because I hear you loud and clear. And I think what may be different about this project is we're just starting. So I think this is exactly what we need to hear, so we can make sure we do what you just asked for. So I think what we need to do, we'll talk with the development team, is figure out a way to engage with the tenants better, to engage and have that conversation. That's something I definitely want to.
And then,
explore.
is this a conversation, or is this already, because it seemed like there's been checks cut for this project?
Yeah, there has.
Like, is this going on,
No,
or
this is the whole thing.
like,
So
where are we?
We're at the beginning. We're at the very
So
beginning.
no
it's a
money,
little-
no checks has been.
No
what's
checks.
going
I
on
haven't
here?
gotten any checks myself.
Okay.
So, but
I want to know. I want to know. The only way I can know is if
No,
I
and I
ask.
appreciate you telling.
Where
me,
are
so,
we in this?
Very
Should
beginning.
I continue to sweat? Do I have a minute to skate? Can I continue to service my clients? Should I beg you for a spot? Like where,
I think
you know?
what would be most helpful is if you could give your contact to Steve and Ivan, I could reach out and we could follow up separately. Because I think it'll be super helpful for me. I want to dive deep into what you're talking about.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, definitely. But we're at the
Okay, thanks,
beginning, so
guys.
that's what I could commit to. So.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. The work is beautiful and all the other states, and I don't doubt it won't be in South Norwalk, but don't forget about us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Sweets.
We'll have a spot for you.
We will. Okay, I'll ask them. All right, I think we have a we have a question from online. How do I engage with this? Just so. Okay. Can you make sure she gets this?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Great. My name is Roseanne Fulham. I live in South Norwalk Way at the end of Woodward Avenue. And I came to this meeting kind of annoyed. And you've already dissuaded me on some of that because it does look beautiful. You mentioned about the schools, and that's very important to me because I just retired after teaching in Norwalk for 44 years, and our schools are crowded. I'm not sure I agree with your numbers, but if you say that that's a fact, that we're not adding population, I will have to believe you. But one of my biggest concerns is I've lived in Norwalk, South Norwalk specifically, for 37 years, and it takes me longer to get from one end of Woodward Avenue through South Norwalk and to 95 than it does for me to get from 95 up to Westport. It is ridiculous the amount of traffic in South Norwalk. Now, while this is beautiful, I'm trying to figure out how I go around construction. Because right now I can't get down Main Street because of all the construction by the police station there. And sometimes I can't get down Water Street because it floods. And this just kind of makes me wonder what is being done for the people that actually have to, I'm sorry, Tanner, I am driving, have to get out of Norwalk by car, and there's no place for us to go. So I'm just asking, why is everything being routed into South Norwalk? Is anything being done to go around the area, maybe make it more friendly for pedestrians so that cars could avoid the area a bit?
All right, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Obviously with the development this size, as was mentioned, there'll be a lot of traffic analysis that's going to go into this. So we'll definitely be keeping that in mind as we go. I mean, it's going to be more of an area-wide impact analysis as well, given the scale. I mean, we're talking about $250 to $300 million of private investment, and a lot of that's going to go into infrastructure and helping out, trying to reconcile these, conflicts that you're identified, and trying to use this product as a mechanism to improve some of these longstanding issues as well at the same time. So we'll definitely keep you posted as we develop the plans further and, the relative traffic impacts with the overall area in mind for sure. So thank you for that comment. Is there anyone else in the audience? Yeah, we'll go to the audience real quick.
Lisa Britton, live here around the corner in Shorefront Park. I've taken some notes. They're not in the order of importance, just in the order that I wrote them down. Wanted to echo Tanner, we must have a grocery store in this area. Too often the city is building all these apartments and there are no amenities going in. They talk about ground level. And I know that that's the marketplace, but we bring in people, we don't bring in the support services. I am a little concerned that building is going to another developer. Don't know what that means. So that's just something to be concerned about. The parking being replaced by a garage, that's great. Hopefully you keep it kind of light and airy. As females, we're a little bit more nervous about large, dark parking garages. But I understand appreciate the need to make better use and financial usage of the parking lot. I like the idea of a pedestrian promenade. That looks great. It's pretty. I like the fact that you want to do setbacks. We have not done decent setbacks in this city with any of the other projects. They've been built right up to the sidewalk. They make residents, if they want to do anything to their properties, there are all these setback rules. That doesn't seem to apply to these special permit projects of the larger apartment complexes. I only have to comment on two, one being POCO, and that's before your time, Brian, so I do not hold you.
Is it?
That's only been going on for a decade. Darien can build, the Corbin inside of a year, and we have a decade of a Tyvek temple in downtown Wall Street, which I'm sure all you gentlemen have heard about, and financial disaster. I like the fact that it's not walled off, the porous, this, the pedestrian friendliness. The concerns about obviously the local community, a lot of the development that's been going on here in Norwalk has displaced the local community and forced them out and brought in new folks from Westchester, as everyone moves east. One of the concerns that I've got is that Norwalk has never done a good job with its financials. When we built Sound Landings, the per unit costs of those things were between $650,000 and $700,000, and you could buy a condo for less than that. The Wall Street project, POCO, that went belly up, $800,000 a unit, and 15 years of tax credits. So I like the idea that you say this is going to bring in $2.5 million. That's what you say today. We can't fund our schools, our grand list in the biggest boom time of ever. And this is more Norwalk's government rather than you fine gentlemen. I've got a son who's in commercial development. So this is on Norwalk, but our problem is our grand list has gone down $167 million during the biggest boom time. And so I am concerned about, they haven't talked the financials, how we're going to fund this thing. And my concern is just that a lot of the development has been done on the backs of taxpayers. And then we haven't seen anything from it. And you guys make a lot of money, or whoever you sell it to makes a lot of money, but that's been the concern. We've got a couple of bad projects, but that is before your time, Brian. And I think this looks beautiful, but I am concerned about the local community being displaced. And again, making sure that, yeah, does it really contribute $2.5 million? But what if it generates $5 million in costs? So that's watching the numbers is what I'm going to do on a lot of this.
Great.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much. Those are actually really very helpful points. One of the things I can say that we just engaged is an economic impact analysis firm. So we're just going into contract with them right now to help work on this project. So we're going to be providing data, providing a detailed third-party review of the financials, the capital stack, the pro forma, questioning assumptions. And what I can say that's different, I think, than the other projects since I've been here, we're talking about transacting on a fair market value basis for the property. We're not talking about, large sort of relief programs similar to what you've mentioned before. That's not where our heads are at. I think the market is strong enough here to actually justify that, but we're going to have some third-party support to help Norwalk negotiate the best position and try to provide transparency in that regard.
It will be the first time, because we didn't do it with them all, and we didn't do it with
Right.
Logo, and I don't think we did it with Sound Landings, so it's Sound Landings, and so just weary.
Yeah, no, and it's completely understandable.
Be able to do this soon.
No, and I'm very comfortable addressing this just because we went out of our way to hire this firm for this exact reason. And I think you touched a couple of points too about gentrification, the things that I want to talk about today, even though they're scary topics, right? Our role in redevelopment is economic development, but it's also community development, and it's finding that balance. And I think communities across the country have a hard time doing that. So I'm hopeful that this project could help try to find that way to find that balance. And that's why we're starting so far back, which I think some of the projects that you get are kind of up at your doorstep and like, hey, does that understood from Suites? I think that's the resonating factor. Oh, sorry, Suites, I just saw it there. No, but I get what you're saying. And we're really trying to use this project, the centerpiece project for the city. I think it's a centerpiece project for us to try to rebuild that, the dialogue in between the community and the economics and trying to figure out what can work. And there's a lot of constraints on this project. I won't lie. There's a lot of things as they've identified with the easements, a lot of technical, there's a lot of historical information that we're dealing with, a lot of contractual things. We're just here to work it out, hopefully as a group. And that's why we did this. You started with this listening session. So, and we'll definitely keep you all posted on the economic side of things as those economic impact analysis work is being performed. So, yeah. Yeah. Jess, did you? So Jess Vonishek, Chief of Economic and Community Development.
Sorry, Brian, no, I just hit that by accident, but I think exactly what you're saying is exactly in line with what we're talking about, that it's not just about economic development, it's about community development. And I just want everyone to know that from the city standpoint, transportation, mobility, and parking and planning and zoning are working really closely with the redevelopment agency to make sure that that this project meets the community needs. And we know based on the work that we've been doing with South Norwalk about the importance of the grocery store and the importance of streetscape and the connectivity between this development and the train station itself. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew from the city standpoint that that we are on top of this and that we're working really closely with the developer and the redevelopment agency on this.
Thanks, Jess. Do we have anyone else online? I just want to make sure everyone has a fair shot, even if they're not here. You raised hands for questions. Not at the moment. Is there anyone in the audience? Oh, hi. Hi, nice. Yeah.
Phil Kiai here, Norwalk native. I live in the Wolfbit area. Do a lot of recreational cycling through town, hit all the attractions that are in town all the time. I'm actually late today because probably almost died 3 times getting here. Probably not an exaggeration, right, babe? So when I see you guys have a beautiful project from what I've seen, but when I see just the sheer amount of parking, does anybody cycle around here in town?
Right
Yeah.
here.
So yeah, you do.
Oh, yeah,
You should come for a
absolutely.
ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure you know that it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine today, after hours where people are already out of work, just the sheer amount of cars that are already on the road, adding that many parking spaces, bringing that many new people in here as they go around and drive through all these areas, it's going to be extremely dangerous. So I think that less parking would be ideal. And as I've heard, force people to use alternative transportation. We need to push for health and wellness. We need to get more people out there walking, biking. New technologies of biking are through the roof. They're faster than some cars. We don't need this many car parking spaces. And that's all. I'm just want to be safe. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And definitely active transportation. You want to add anything?
I think one of the great things that we didn't mention, and we touched upon it briefly, was that the setbacks along Martin Luther King. There is actually a multimodal plan that Norwalk has created over time. And what we're actually looking to do is actually change the curb edge along Martin Luther King, actually adding in a bike lane and starting that process that along that major avenue. Now, we can't go beyond our site, obviously, but maybe we can be, the rock in the pond for you, right? And let the ripples kind of come out from there. So I think what we want to do is try to do our part to increase that level of safety. Coming from where I come from in DC, probably in the last 10 years, it's been fascinating to watch all the different methodologies and ways that they've woven the bike lanes through the city so that you could actually get connectivity from one side of the city to the other now without actually being intermingling with car traffic. So I think we want to try to do that.
So that route right there, that's a Martin Luther King is a state highway, right? A state route. So I don't know what state number that's called.
They're all town.
That's town? Okay. I only reason why I say that is because in my area, North Norwalk, the state recently did a road, the junction between 33 and 53, and there's no bike lane. So when, and from the state perspective, hey, we need things for bicyclists, we need things for pedestrians, because it's healthy.
Yeah.
Not just that's it. I mean, what takes more priority than health?
Yeah. And I can tell you that was a key part where we did even the procurement for this, having the firms propose their multimodal plan, take a look at active transportation. So it's definitely on the forefront of our minds.
1,000 more
So I
cars,
appreciate
a lot more cars.
Yeah, true. All right. Thanks. Hi, can I get you next? Thank you for your comments, by the way.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? My name is Ben Handpeter. Just for sake of transparency, I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals, but tonight I'm just speaking as a private citizen. I had just a couple comments to run through here. First, I think this project is really exciting and has a ton of opportunity. I think it's great that we're adding all this housing in a really critical location. It's really needed. And so I'm excited to see that come to fruition. I really love the pedestrian promenade. Norwalk doesn't really have anything like that right now. And in cities where they do have something like that, it really does become like a focal point for the entire city, and it could be a really tremendous asset. I had the good fortune of going to school in Boulder, Colorado, and Pearl Street is a really well-known pedestrian promenade, and it's a really amazing place to spend time. And if we had something similar in Norwalk, that would be really phenomenal. Something I did want to say about that, though, is the new road that's being planned to cut through there. I know that it's still early in the project and there hasn't been any detailed traffic analysis yet. But I did want to challenge a little bit the notion that there does have to be cut through traffic through this site. Because right now, I would imagine that today there's probably not a tremendous amount of cut through traffic. Like people are going in there to the parking lot and they're not really just cutting directly from MLK to Washington or vice versa. And I'm sure that whatever traffic counts are done will will bear that out one way or the other. I think even better would be just to make that another part of the promenade, and then you'd have like double the area, and the whole site would really become like a true like pedestrian oasis in like the middle of Norwalk, which would be fantastic. I want to echo the comments made by a few others about the need to keep the grocery store there. I think that's like really, really critical. I really don't think the project can succeed if you don't have one. And it would also harm a bunch of other areas in South Norwalk were it to disappear. Yeah, and then I also just want to echo some other comments made about parking. I think at maximum, the parking should be kept flat with current conditions and not added onto. Again, because of, this is the best place in Norwalk where you could live car light or car free, as Tanner said. That was a really good point. We're right next to the Metro North. You're served by a whole bunch of bus lines. You're close to the NRVT. Like, it really doesn't get any better than this site. So I hope to see that number scaled back. And then the last thing is, it might be a little early for this, but I'm wondering what sort of roadway improvements might be in scope for this project along either MLK or on Washington Street, because those are both pretty challenging streets to navigate for people on foot and on bikes. And I would hope that maybe as a part of this project, given that it is so large, that there would be some room to get in some improvements on those roads. And yeah, that's all I've got to say.
All right, thanks. I don't know if anyone want to make some comments in terms of your preliminary thinking on the traffic and transportation, or I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk as well. Sorry.
I just think even though MLK is a state road, we control from the curb back into our property. So by actually setting aside a few feet for the bike lane, for making a wider sidewalk, for making it safer, we can start the process on our block. We obviously don't control all of the city, but with good planning, we can lead the way and plan our site so it can impact other sites as they are developed, or encourage the city to continue on what we start here. Your comment about health, we've talked so much about redevelopment, but really we're talking about health. We're talking about parks. We're talking about pedestrians. We're talking about cycling. We're talking about creating plazas, open air, simply creating a space where there's open air. So I think we're all singing from the same sheet of music. And I think that these are the things that we truly believe in. And it's wonderful to hear them coming out from you.
And I think the question in terms of this, specific roadway plan and like that, like you said, it's a little premature right now. We're still reconciling the development program. Obviously, to do that, we want to obtain public feedback, and then we'll be coming back with some ideas and options that will be analyzed further. So. Okay, yep, one for online. Lou Schulman?
Yeah,
Hello.
Lou Schulman, Chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission. It's not appropriate for me to comment on the project itself. I know that you're working with our staff, but I wanted to suggest that you get on one of our agendas in the not too distant future to update the commission members on the project and keep us informed as it moves forward.
Happy to do that, Lou. We'll set up a time.
Thank you.
All right. Hi. How you doing?
Hey, everyone. My name is JJ Byron for Transparency. I'm also on Planning and Zoning. But I come to you with a question from District B. South Norwalk is our district. And I have a question that's been posed to me by some of my members. Just in reference to the scope of your buildings, of mixed residential and mixed businesses, retail, do you have a plan for providing a pathway to home ownership for first-time homeowners?
Yeah, and that hasn't been something that's been discussed at length, but we did talk about that in our community advisory committee. And I don't know if we're going to reach out. We want to set that back up for this group as well. So as the next step, we want to reconstitute that community advisory group to start having that discussion on what that could look like.
Is it slated only for rentals?
currently right now, I think their pro forma does have just rentals, but I think one thing should talk about is how we take the resources of this is driving to create these ownership opportunities either
Yes.
here or elsewhere. So I think that's a big thing that we've already talked about internally. So
Very important decision to me.
So I'll definitely be sending out an email because I was going to reach out to you. So nice to see you. Any other comments from the crowd or the online? We have an online. What can we do? All right, Peter, I think you're live.
Oh, great. Hi, Peter Sosno. I live in Shorefront Park. Terrific presentation. Thank you. I think one of the difficulties in this, sort of looking at a bold presentation like this and being a resident is sometimes the context in that, what else is going on? You sort of show the site, but for some people, there's development all across Norwalk or zoning changes. So when we talk about, parking, I have friends who don't come to Norwalk because there isn't enough parking. You said there's both sides, but if we're developing all on MLK or elsewhere in Norwalk, sometimes that context, I think, would help us understand the flow, traffic flow, housing, other issues that may crop up. So I think as you proceed, I think it may be important to talk about the greater Norwalk area and other development that's ongoing and other considerations so we can put everything in that context. Because if there is a way to do better traffic or to improve traffic or parking or more housing, maybe there's other developments underway nearby that can support what you're doing as well, rather than just the block, which is the area you're developing. So that's my comment, to just try to include that maybe in future presentations, some context around Norwalk.
Great, thanks, Peter. And I think one of the things, as Greg mentioned, subsequent to this, we're talking about possibly doing an open house where we could have the different disciplines, not only from their team, but also the city, to help maybe try to provide a little better context in that regard. That should be, so thank you for your comment. Any more in person? Oh, hi. Hey, Patsy.
Patsy Brescia. I'm a resident of Norwalk. A longtime city activist, construction, both private and public. So this is very exciting. The Webster Street lot has been a sweet spot in Norwalk for decades. So something is about to happen, and that's wonderful. But I'm here tonight as vice chairman of the library board of trustees. And due to my experience in construction, I know how important it is to articulate any concern early in the process so that it doesn't get buried at the end when it's not practical to consider it. And that is, we as a library, we have 21 spots behind this building. And we are limited to the kind of programmings that we can offer here because of lack of parking. So we had negotiated with the city and the Norwalk Parking Authority additional parking spaces in the Webster lot. And so I am here to make sure that you're aware of that and that those spots can be protected. The library is, you talk about community, the library, libraries throughout the country are not quiet spots anymore. They are civic centers. And we have this beautiful building and this beautiful piece of opportunity as a venue for people, but we're limited to what we can do because of lack of housing. So libraries are very important to everybody, and I hope that you will protect our ability to expand programs here with your project. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Hi, how you doing?
I'm Jocelyn, longtime resident, born and raised here. So there's a few, I love the project. I love the idea of it and the promenade and everything. I think that's beautiful. And I would like, what comes to mind is like, I guess, more access points to that area. So like even on the corner, like this corner right here, MLK Road, that there would be like a center entrance, even, like underneath, there's like a spot right down the road that is kind of similar, but make it more visible and more, I guess, like welcoming, so that the community knows that they can walk in there and that it's not just like closed off, because sometimes when you see those big buildings, like, I'll be honest with you, as a person of color, when you see big buildings like that and it's just kind of closed off, you don't feel like you belong. You don't feel like you can go in. And that's really, really important when we're talking about like gentrification, for example, because growing up here in Norwalk, there's a lot of minorities in Norwalk. There's a lot of Hispanics, Black people, like Asian people, all types. And we want to make sure that the community, all of us feel welcomed. And especially in South Norwalk, like not just this area, but like even going further down, there's a lot of people of color and there's a lot of people being pushed out of their homes. So we want to make sure that it is affordable for these people. There's affordable apartments, affordable housing, even in these places for people to live there. And so that it isn't just like one type of color of person, it's like everybody is living and it's a true community and a true representation of what Norwalk is. Another point that I would like to make is, I'm sorry to play devil's advocate, but I understand the health and the walkways because I completely agree. But when we take into consideration how many apartments, I guess, are being built in, I came in a little bit later, so I don't know if you gave an estimate of how many apartments would be there. Do you have one?
Yeah, it's between 400 to 500.
Okay, 400 to 500, yeah. So I think we have to be realistic about people having cars. Like most people will have one car, a lot of people have a second car. So we have to be realistic about the people who will be living in the apartment and realistic about the community that is driving in, because the promenade isn't just going to be for the apartment dwellers. The whole point is for it to be for the community at large. So I don't live within walking distance. I could live, but it's not exactly safe for me to walk all the way down here. So I prefer to drive to come all the way down here and I have to park. But if there's not enough parking spaces, I'm not going to come here. So again, it contributes to being, not being inclusive. So we want to be inclusive. We want to make sure that different communities, like not just the community that's living here has immediate access, like within the within the next block is able to come in, but the rest of Norwalk is also able to come in because, the movie theater is down here. I do frequent it. I'll go down to the restaurants. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of businesses that are great. And not only that, but also making it affordable. I will say, like, making it affordable for businesses to be down here, because one thing that I've noticed in Norwalk is that businesses come and go like crazy, especially down there. And it's so unfortunate because it would be so nice to have a mom and pop shop that they're like a staple of Norwalk. They're great, food's great, you can always go there. But if the prices of all these locations are too high, then it's just going to create more turnover, which right now there is a lot of turnover. Like there's just been so many restaurants coming and going, and it's unfortunate. So it would be nice if it is affordable for business owners so that they can actually stay and, give back to the community so that people can have jobs at those businesses, and also the grocery store. It's just logical to have a grocery store in the area. Let me see. The schooling, I also kind of am worried about adding so many apartments. It doesn't seem like too many apartments, but just the reality of our school systems are overcrowded right now in Norwalk. And, the teachers get the brunt of it. So we want to make sure that they're supported and that we're a little bit more realistic, even generous in our estimates about how many kids are going to come in, especially if it's an apartment, because people aren't going to always be staying in apartments. Some people will want to buy properties. So there's always going to be turnover. We want to make sure that those students that possibly do go into the Norwalk system, that they're taking into account, and that the school system is also supported in Norwalk. Let's see. And then for the, I guess, like the main parking area, my biggest thing is that for it to not be an eyesore. So as much as I would like there to be parking, and I'm a big proponent of like, yes, make sure there's parking, make it look beautiful. Personally, the most favorite places I've gone to around the world have been places that do have that architectural backdrop, but have gardens, like hanging gardens or different things that are added to bring, that kind of brings balance between the more architecture, like hard side and concrete side, between like nature. Because, you know, Norwalk is pretty, we're on the shore. So creating spaces that not just with the apartment buildings, but also like the parking garage, make it look beautiful on the outside or even on the inside, so that, you know, it isn't an eyesore when we walk into it. But yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Those are very important and thoughtful comments. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, you want to go next? You know, what was your name again? I'm sorry, I apologize. Jocelyn, thank you. I appreciate it.
My name is Donna Smirniotopoulos. I also live in Shorefront Park, so that's 3 of us. We carpool today, so for the people who are concerned about parking, we're neighbors and we carpooled. So instead of 2 cars, we only brought 1 car, and one of the reasons was we didn't want to have to pay to park. So I agree 100% with the people who say you need to not only replace the parking that is there now, but have enough parking for the people who, it's just not realistic. I wish it were realistic today to imagine that people are going to give up their cars. I don't think that that's going to happen. And I know that I don't know what the arrangement is going to be for paying to park, but if I have to go to the grocery store and I now have to pay in order to park at whatever this grocery store is going to be, I'm just going to go to ShopRite. And I think that that is realistic behavior for most people. I know there are a lot of people who live in Norwalk who will not pay to park because it does add up. You know, if you're doing a string of errands and you're paying, the liquor store across the bridge from us is $2 to park. Maybe I don't shop at that liquor store. So I don't know if the city is going to own this parking lot. I hope not. So I know at the mall that, you know, if you have a Bloomingdale's card, you can, you know, so when I go to the mall, which is rarely, I don't pay to park, but parking drives, no pun intended, drives a lot of the problems facing Norwalk. I love the way this looks conceptually. I spent a lot of time in Virginia. I grew up in PG County. My mother lives in Alexandria. And whenever I'm looking to what good development looks like, I say, well, they're doing this in Virginia. They're doing this in Northern Virginia. They're making it easier for cars to get around, much easier for cars. Yes, they've had to add highways, but it is infinitely easier now for me to travel from where I used to live, which was the Mount Vernon area. And I went to school in the district and it was an hour. And now I can do it in half an hour. Somehow they've added density to that area. And yet they haven't made everybody miserable with the traffic. I don't know what and I don't think that these fine gentlemen have anything to do with Norwalk's traffic problems, but getting in and out of our neighborhood is a nightmare. And that's on a good day when there's no flooding on Water Street. So I think that whatever is done with the Webster lot, you know, it looks fantastic. I don't know what the capital stack looks like. I don't know if there's any HUD money coming into this or any state money. Okay, that's good for me.
No
That's
HUD
good.
money, yeah.
Good. But to echo my other neighbor, Peter Sosnow in Shorefront Park, I would love to see the whole context of what we envision for Norwalk, including the Water Street development area. We're under a circus study right now, looking at vulnerabilities, flooding vulnerabilities, but P&Z is still interested in developing the marina area. So I want to see everything in context. This is as an island unto itself. It looks fantastic to me. But I too would like to see the whole context of where do we see Norwalk in 10 years? And I'm not against density at all. You know, I'm happy to see more housing offered. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's very helpful. As it exposes, I mean, there's a lot of things that we're going to be working through, even the capital stack, all these things. Once we sort of reconcile the development program, take a look at the impacts. Did you guys want to add anything to any of those comments? I know you've done work in Northern Virginia. I think me and Doug actually met there when I saw their first project.
Well,
So
we did the Market Common in Clarendon in Virginia, where the Crate and Barrel is and where Barnes and Noble is, and with that very large park area in the center. And that I'm proud to say that we were trailblazers at the time. That was back in the late 90s when we built that project. And I'm proud to say that project's been copied at a number of other locations. So, but it just, the power of the public spaces is immense. Europe, the public squares, it's hard to just describe them, but many of the cities are that's the absolute center of where everything happens in these public squares. And so the comment about making better access to our park or our square is a great one. But, you know, we'd like to consider this whole project as being a square. The streets, the pedestrian streets, the park in the center all work together to create this special place. So thank you for your compliments about Northern Virginia. We've contributed to that.
They haven't built that. I mean, to interject, but as you know, we have not built those sorts of, we've had an unprecedented development over the last decade. And they've all been closed off fortresses that have not been street friendly, have done nothing to increase the streetscape. They've all been closed off. So if this is porous and open, that's the first that's ever happened in this.
Well, and I think that I'm speaking for everybody here. That's what made this site. There are many sites that you can bid on for developers to bid on around the country, but that's precisely what made this site very attractive to us. The fact that what you've done on Main Street, what you've already done on Washington, the possibilities along MLK. I mean, it's just waiting there to be taken advantage of and developed. And I guess I can just say thank you for the opportunity. I mean, we really, really respect this piece of land. And
the public has very little to do with what goes on in Norwalk.
Well, one thing I can say too is when we were going through the evaluation process, that's what stood out to us as well. We had the city side, we had our side looking at these, we had multiple options. And that porousness, I think, is something that really resonated with us as well, because we didn't want that we wanted it to be a community space as well. So I think trying to achieve that balance, and that's what their initial proposal does. Obviously, we're going to be working together to refine it, but that was a big selling point for us internally. Yeah, is there a question online? I could get you one. I don't know if we have one here right now. Do you have a handout? Oh, she has copies of the presentation. Sorry, who's someone online?
There's a question online.
Yeah, we could elevate. Can we elevate them to be a panelist, or is it? Oh, there's a question in the chat. Oh, okay. So I can't see this. I'm pretty much blind, so. Oh, that's true. Access the park, which is planned to be on top of the garage. And that, yeah, you want to talk about that, Brian? Sorry.
Absolutely. I wonder if we can share a screen again. And if we can't, I think the idea is that the pedestrian promenade, everything's at grade. Some of the previous plans that we have looked at actually built parking garages that would require staircases or elevators or whatever it may have been to get up to the top of the parking garage. What we're actually going to do is actually start that ramp actually at grade, and it will pitch up, but you will actually be able to meander up onto the top of the parking garage, actually using the pitches of the ramp to our advantage to go from 0 up to probably about 12 feet. And so there'll be about a 12-foot difference across plus or minus about, I think it's a little over an acre and a half of park. So it's actually quite a gentle rise, because actually you don't want to park on greater than 5%. Or your door swings open and whacks the car right next to you. So we've been very conscious about all the pitches in the parking garages, accessibility for all the residents. So it's actually going to be a quite pleasant kind of shallow way on up to the park. And the majority of the park is also basically on grade. I would say 2/3 of it is roughly on grade.
Thanks. Yeah, go for it.
Name and address or anything like
that? Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, whatever you want to provide.
Santo, I live in Norwalk. You guys down at the police station a couple years ago? The meeting down at the police station?
What were they doing at the police station? Should I look into
No,
that? Wait a second.
Oh, you don't mean you were in jail. I mean, there was a meeting at the community room at the police station. Any of you there that night?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right. I was at a meeting about 2 years ago. I'm Joe Santo. I was on the zoning commission for many, many years. This goes back with me with Mike Green.
Oh, yeah.
When he was commissioner, I was on the zoning commission for over 15 years. And this is new to, this is old stuff to me that we considered many years ago. And we, Mike Green and I really supported this. We wanted this to happen. And one of the things I want to bring up there, brought up 2 years ago. Now, I missed a lot. I got here a little late, I guess. The access. Now, Webster Street used to be, as you probably know, where the walkway is in that general area. Matter of fact, it used to be, where Leighton Insurance used to be, there was a photograph there years ago that showed the original Webster Street. I don't know if you guys got a hold of that. So they actually showed the street itself. Years ago, Mike DeGangi and I, Mike Green and I met with Mike DeGangi in front of O'Neill's. And said Dominic DeGangi was DPW director at that time. Can't make a left turn here. Access. How do you get to that parking lot? If you're going north on North Wall Street, you can't make a left. You have to go down Washington Street to North, and you got to go to the alleyway here, go to there, or go all the way around to the traffic light around the corner. Now, Dominic at the time said it was possible to do that. There was a lot of infrastructure underneath that island there to be able to access to make a left turn there. Well, I think that would be a home run for this project if that was possible to put a left turn there. Because years ago, the soldier that's over here on the green used to be on the green there, but that got moved to the park over here a long time ago. Is that being considered?
What was that? I'm sorry?
A left turn in front of O'Neill's.
Oh, the specific left turn. Yeah, I think once we kind of get a better idea on the site sort of access points and the development program, that's something we could consider. We could take a look at that with the traffic study. Definitely.
Okay, certainly hope so, because at the time when this project came up on, it's probably 15 years ago or more, then it sort of waned off because of economics. That was brought up at the zoning commission. And I don't know, I missed a lot. I mean, this is a great project and really, I think needs to be done, but the economics are there now, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing we kind of started with is obviously this has a long history, as you've identified, multiple planning projects that have been done over the past 2 decades, and we've been diving deep into, they've been diving deep into them along with our office and unearthing these sort of comments, but the economics have reached the point where we're more confident that we can circumvent some of these
Matter of fact, it
issues.
looks like the guy saw there at the post office, that was you. Down at the police station, I saw, that was you, wasn't it?
Was he in the jail at the
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
Just to answer your
I
comment,
wanted to
though,
bail him out.
there will be, and I think what you're bringing up is an improvement that's slightly off our site. But as we bring on our traffic consultants and all, we will study the area, not just on our property, but around. And that's where comments like this, putting in a left turn there to enable the traffic to get to our site easier, is a great comment. We, not being local, wouldn't think of that, but that's
I think, I mean, I don't know what you think of it, but I think it would have to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, the driveway here. The owner of the building, I don't remember the gentleman's name anymore, that with the telephone operators building where they used to sit years ago. Half that driveway is owned by that building where the club is. And when this came up years ago, the owner of the building, did anybody know his name?
Jack Medusa, yeah.
Jack Medusa, there you go, Jack Medusa. Thank you. He threatened to shut down the driveway when the city wanted to do something there years ago, because he owns up to the island there. I'm sure you guys know that. And I don't know if he's still a player in this thing. But I hope there isn't the same issue again, because he was a a bottleneck then when they threatened to shut down the driveway and shut down the coming in, make it two-way. Then now it's two-way, of course, but going out is his property. I do remember that, right? Still is, right?
Still is.
Okay. Good luck. All right. So, but that's my comments, all right?
Great.
I think
yeah.
the project I remember years ago, and I missed what you did before, but I think it should be done and it'd be great for the city. All right.
Great. Thank you so much. We're good on. It is 7:30, so I want to be respectful with all your time. Is there any maybe last two comments? Yeah, Representative Sims, how you doing? Nice to see you.
Good evening, Brian, and good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Travis Sims. I was born and raised in this district my entire life. I remember running up and down this street here as a world champion boxer, right? And my focus is really putting forth projects that's going to be conducive for the residents that live here. And over the years, I have seen this South Norwalk has just drastically changed from what it was. And yes, it's beautiful. And everything that you guys are presenting here today is beautiful. But at what cost? At what cost do we continue to go down this road where we're building these projects? We're taking away home ownership. All these properties are being built, just high-rise apartment buildings. I believe they're 1 and 2 bedrooms. We have to start thinking about the people that's from this community and really seriously take that seriously, because for me, as a hometown guy, this place looks nothing like what I'm used to. And the people that's around here looks nothing like I'm used to. And all the small businesses that are around here, yes, they're impacted and they feel it. I hear it every day. So as these developers continue to start talking about developing here in this city, and in particular here in South Norwalk, I want to make sure that they all take these folks in consideration. We have a high senior population here, low income community here, working class folks here. And you have people who have to make a choice whether they put gas in their tank or put food on their table. And as we continue to build these developments, and the revals are done every 5 years. And in fact, this is a year that the reval is being done. They take an assessment of all this property that's being built in this and within this half-mile to 1 mile radius. And that impacts our cost, our way of living here, our cost of living here. So everyone taxes and everyone property value goes up. But yes, it's fine if you're looking to sell your home, but if you're looking to stay here, it becomes a real burden. So I want us to really take a holistic look at that and make sure when we talk about building here in this city, that we are looking out for the taxpayers here in South Norwalk. And in addition to that, my last point is we're talking about creating these jobs here. When you start building these, this parking lot and building these apartments. I've seen it happen with the mall. I sat on the Common Council for 10 years. We made recommendations to the developers. They agreed to everything. Once they got their COs, everything came out, went right off the books. They didn't put any suggestions or ideas that were shared with them during public hearings. And they took none of those constituents' ideas and put those as part of the plan as it was originally intended. Once they got their approvals, all that went out the window. Is that going to happen with this project? I certainly hope not, because these people, they deserve a beautiful place, but they don't deserve to be lied to. And with these jobs, we want to make sure that these jobs are for local workers. We've seen the developers coming here from all across the state and from other states, surrounding states. None of those jobs all those jobs was at this mall. None of them were really local workers. These are all guys that were brought in from Bridgeport, New Haven, Massachusetts, Maine, etc. We want to make sure that the workers that are here are the workers that live here. And that's all I got to say. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Representative Sims. Yeah, just one point just on process. So we're obviously here tonight to talk about, feedback on the plan. One thing that I learned when I first did my first project here in town with the South Norwalk TOD project is you're also informing our outreach strategy right now. So, trying to reposition it, taking your feedback in and trying to figure out how better we can engage to get that kind of feedback and actually have a time for a longer format discussion is something we're working on. So I mentioned it to Jackie as well. So we're going to try to do that as well.
Well, as you know, I had a conversation with you as well a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
But I think with this here, they put the cart before the horse. They have a public hearing first. Okay? They hired developers first. I think the public hearing should happen first, get the input from whether or not this was actually really needed or wanted by the residents that live here. Then you go to having a public hearing, then going to find your developer. So I hope going forward that we'll be a little more transparent with the community and with the folks here today.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, so we're looking forward to continuing that conversation and, taking all that feedback specifically. And that's one of the reasons why we picked Forterra as well, is that they're very open and amenable to those sort of things. So any other final questions? Oh, yeah, go for it.
Hey, Brian. Adam Cognetta, Capital Equities Group. How are you guys? I appreciate you going through the presentation again, but so along with Mike and Capital Equity, so obviously we own 50 Washington Street, 3844 North Main, 50 North Main, some property along MLK and then up and down South and North Main. So needless to say, we're vested in South Norwalk and want to see the project succeed. I think we have some concerns of our own, which we've expressed, and we'll continue to work those out and look forward to doing so collaboratively. But I think just a general comment, around retail, I think obviously the promenade is something that's been a focal point of the project. I think it's a cornerstone of the success of everything happening. Something we've been following closely is just the success of the retail up and down North and South Main, along Washington Street. There's anybody with eyes can sort of see there's some vacancies, some holes there that we'd all like to see filled. There's aspirations to add a lot of retail as part of this project, and we want to make sure that, and would like to hear some feedback just on maybe how you intend to fill that, what will draw folks into this project, and making sure that we do so such that it's not at the expense of those other vacancies and the other businesses that are in the area. So I think that we'll leave it at that general comment for now.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Greg.
So I'll make some general comments since again, this is early days. But the general comments that I would make are that number one, if you're adding 400 to 500 apartments, clearly you're adding, additional people that are within easy walking distance of all of the existing shops and restaurants and so forth on Main Street and Washington Street and all the other surrounding areas. So I think that's pretty self-apparent. And I think that the types of retail that you would expect to see here could really run the gamut. I think that it could be anything from services. It could be sort of experiential type retail, which is more, very popular these days. It could be food and beverage type operations. Could be any number of things. But I think that in general, what we want to see is things that are, I think, additive to the overall development in the sense that it creates an amenity, not only for the people that live there, but also for the surrounding community as well. It's, we don't want what I would call, I'm not sure what the right term is, but we want things that are of benefit. Really, our objective here is to weave this development into the fabric of the community. We don't want to be competing in a sense with what's going on. We want to weave ourselves into the fabric and be a part of the community. So, at early stages, I think that's about as much as I could say.
Thanks. And I could talk about just sort of planning goal when we first started the whole process is to be supportive and not cannibalize existing retail. We're well aware of the vacancy rate. I mean, we obviously are in your building, so we're pretty familiar with what's going on, but we want to bring people to the area to enhance the market and help support these uses. And I think the more we're having these conversations, I think we can do it, the better we can do that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, I'm Emily. I live in the area and I just wanted to thank everyone for speaking today too. I learned a lot hearing from our community and it's really good to hear that we're all working towards this goal of making Norwalk more accommodating for everyone. And I'm actually moving from Clarendon, so I know the Market Common very well. And I worked in DC and I was able to live without a car and walk and bike and take the train and bus. And so my last comment to you is how are you going to accommodate the bus and, you know, public works around this area now too?
Yeah, so I think in terms of, just the general plan, once we get the development program, we're going to work heavily with the Office of Transportation, Mobility and Parking to figure that whole thing out. So it's definitely on the forefront of our minds. Yeah, definitely. All right, one last call. I want to be respectful of all your time. Anyone else? All right, well, I can't thank you enough for joining. There's gonna be more to come. We'll send out invites. We'll have stuff on our webpage and we'll keep this discussion going. So thank you. Nice to see you all. Thanks. Got a hot mic.
I'm sorry, I couldn't just sit here and shut up. But this is, you're the